The Nerdcast Empire is on the air. We are back for another edition of Anime Thursdays here on the Nerdcast Empire. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us. Episode 79 of the Nerdcast Empire as we continue our way toward 100 episodes, which will happen in the next couple months or so. Great to have everybody along. We're also closing in on our 1-year anniversary of the Nerdcast Empire. That'll be coming up in a little over a week's time. And kind of crazy. We've been at it for a whole year now, but we're going to continue on and continue doing cool things here with the Nerdcast Empire. Joining me on another episode of Anime Thursdays in the studio is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It is going. Looking forward to talking about some anime, both what I'm watching and some music that I'm listening to.
Chris joining us in the chat tonight with a very scary emoji there. It's hard to believe that we've been at this as long as we have, but great to have Chris back along with us as well. And we're going to talk some anime headlines. Obviously, in the second half of our show, we're going to kind of continue something we're doing once a month where Mike and I will go through and basically pick 5 of our favorite anime opens or endings or insert themes or whatever. Yeah, anywhere inside the show and be able to play those, or at least we'll try to play those. If you're here live with us, that's your best chance of being able to hear those songs. Obviously, when they get to the VODs, who knows? And if you're listening on the podcast version, you'll get to hear us talk about these songs, but obviously we won't be able to play the clips of the songs on the podcast version. But if you're a fan of our music edition that comes your way every Sunday, you kind of know how that works at this point. But we've got a few just brief headlines to talk about. But before we do that, I kind of wanted to just chat about what we're watching currently. I know you're doing a much better job of kind of getting through stuff right now with your daily workouts, and it's kind of allowed you to really kind of plow through a lot of anime, both current stuff and older stuff. So kind of since the last time we've talked about it on the show, what's on the agenda for your watch list?
Yeah, the benefits of working from home and kind of getting that daily treadmill time has been immense for my really preparation for this podcast. I figure, if we're doing all these different topics nerd-wise, it's good to kind of do a little homework and feel like I have something to bring to the table. I just recently wrapped up the first season of Kaiju number 8. Definitely recommend that. Kind of excited to see where they go with that. Another one that I kind of joked about watching for a long time, years now, that I actually I did finally get around to. It was a fairly short show, 12 episodes. Kids on the Slope. I'll probably be talking about that a little bit later, but definitely like a critically acclaimed show, one that Sentai was hyping tremendously when it came out, and I kind of made fun of it, but it turned out to be pretty amazing. Beyond that, let's see my anime list here. Just a few things from this season that I'm trying to keep up with. A Journey Through Another World, Raising Kids While Adventuring. Nobody's Way Up to an Exploration Hero. Quality Assurance in Another World, and still keeping up with That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. So that's where we're at so far.
Yeah, quite a bit, and a lot of new stuff and some older stuff that you're kind of catching up on. Kids on the Slope was a show that, if I remember correctly, it was an ADV announced show right as ADV was basically in the process of going under and becoming Sentai Filmworks, because it was kind of the show, if I'm remembering right, and I could be wrong, but I feel like it was announced that, was it one of the Otakons we went to?
I think it was like Otakon 12 when they first kind of reemerged, like, hey, we're back, we're doing this.
Yeah,
and it was kind of like the linchpin show that they were really promoting at that point in time.
It may not have even been ADV at that point. ADV might have already kind of gone by the wayside, but it was the people that were behind ADV that were kind of touting this, and they had a panel, and I feel like it was a panel that wasn't as well attended as I would have expected, but we've always been we're big ADV fans from our days of attending OhioCon, where ADV always had a really strong presence there, so we really were kind of hoping that they would come back, and to the company's credit, maybe they're not the juggernaut that ADV was back in the mid-2000s. That's probably a good thing in the long run, because they clearly got in over their head and took on a bunch of stuff that they really couldn't handle. But, High Dive's kind of the little engine that could with Sentai Filmworks, and kind of chugging along and doing really good work and continuing maybe to not license a ton of shows, but putting a lot of care into the ones they do license. And Kids on the Slope was kind of the one that kind of kicked all that off, and it was a show that, like you said, kind of was a running gag for a while, because when they sit there and they pitch it to you, like, yeah, we got this show, it's going to be great, we got great people working on it, it's about jazz, it's about music in the 60s, and you just think, like, is that
we got it, guys.
This is
our next Evangelion.
right, it's like
the next Dragon Ball.
I'm like, I don't know. But like you said, I think it was definitely, it's not the explosions. It's not a Michael Bay anime. It's not, it's a story. I mean, and there were a lot of shows at that time that kind of took that route. And it's from the sounds of it, sounds like they knocked it out of the park. So I definitely will have to get around to checking that out.
It definitely doesn't scream, this is your gateway into the world of anime, but it was really well done. I can understand why it was such a big deal. I mean, anytime you have Yoko Kanno doing music for your show, it must be pretty important. And in doing research for this episode, I actually looked online. I hadn't done this while watching the show, but there's actually a Wikipedia page devoted to the music from Kids on the Slope. And even though I knew they were discussing real artists and real songs, I didn't really think a whole lot about it. But then when you look at the Wikipedia page, it kind of blows your mind, just all the music that they used for this and just the references. It's just something people need to watch.
And I mean, I feel like Beck was a show that certainly got a lot more publicity as far as taking a Western genre of music and really kind of exploring it. This one, I think, kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people. And again, a lot of that had to do with what was going on with ADV/Sentai Filmworks, and not necessarily a show that you're going to run to your local FYE or Best Buy and grab. It's not going to jump out at you, but it feels like something that people need to check out. And again, I'm sure it's probably streaming on High Dive for people who want to check that out. Would be my guess where we could watch that.
I'm sure it is.
You can probably also pick it up off their website. I know they were running. I don't know if they're still running, but I got an email for another summer physical media sale through High Dive.
Deals pretty regularly. So if there's anything you're looking for there, unless you think it's just going to disappear, you could probably wait until it's marked down considerably.
They do a great job with that. Definitely. Again, I'm a big fan of supporting High Dive and Sentai Filmworks, and hopefully we can continue to do that. And I'm doing that right now with my anime that I'm currently watching. I'm watching the second season of Oshi no Ko. 3 episodes into it. It's the one show that I probably in the last year that I've been good about actually watching the day it comes out. It's just really, really good. Kind of feels like we're settling in now. We're 2 or 3 episodes in. We've kind of got the plot for what this season looks like it's going to be. So it's been really good so far. I know the dub, for those who are dub fans, is on the way. I know I've seen some tweets from the voice actors that were in season 1 dub, and they are working on it. I think one of the big anime conventions coming up, Anime NYC, and that may not be right.
I've heard that one in the news just like the last day or so I assume it's coming up.
Yeah, one of them is going to debut the dub there, and I can't remember which one it is. You can find it on their website, but I've been watching it sub the day it comes out. It's really, really good. Really excited to continue to do that. Have been continuing on Laid Back Camp. That's just a show, a comfort food show. Really have enjoyed that. It's been good so far. And then a lot of other stuff. I'm really excited to watch the show from the guy that created Hyoka. So far, it seems like the early reviews on that have been really good. There were a couple other shows that are certainly in the headlines, some for good reasons, some for not good reasons, that I want to check out this season. So
that reminds me, I forgot to add one show. I hadn't put it on my list yet. I did watch the first episode of Why Does Nobody Remember Me in This World?
Oh, yeah.
Or whatever the title. Like, when you look at the title card for it, it has both translations on it. It has that, and then it also has Why Does Nobody Remember My World? So I don't know why they felt the need to show you both of those, but it kind of makes sense within the context of the show, because no one remembers him or his world.
So I guess it works out. I was going to say somebody should be able to grab some sort of source material and look at it and determine which one they really mean. But yeah, I mean, that's another one I've seen.
Pretty wild, dude. Just kind of disappears and reappears in what is his world, but clearly it's kind of like almost like he gets teleported to the bad 1985 and Back to the Future 2, where it's like you're still in your world, but it's not the same world at the same time, and nobody knows him. And things just really suck. So we'll see where he goes from there.
I was thinking that, or like Pottersville and It's a Wonderful Life,
exactly.
where he knows all these guys. They were his buddies, and now they're throwing him out of the bar and all this other stuff because he was never born. So, interesting take. I'll definitely have to keep an eye on that one. And
the other thing about High Dive, just real quick, and Sentai, I kind of feel like now they've become like the sentimental anime company. You never hear them in the news for negative things. Meanwhile, you have Crunchyroll, where you feel like every time you hear something about them, it's bad. And I don't know if that's just a byproduct of being this giant, mega Sony-owned entity now. Like, you just can't help it. But Sentai just kind of feels like the guy you want to root for.
But Crunchyroll has a new logo now. Like, you can do, they've...
Did I miss that?
Well, it's not... It's like a refresh, so it doesn't look much different. In fact, I saw people in the comments, like... You can't really even like tell the difference between the old logo and the new logo. Like, it was funny because I saw one of the comments like, they spent all this money on this. Are they still paying their translators $80 an episode? Like, and I wanted to be like, well, based on the one show we talked about, my guess is they're paying them even less now. So
you're assuming that it wasn't AI that created the new logo too.
Well, that's entirely possible. Yeah. So they traded the comment section for new logos. Chris said, yeah, that does seem to be the case. So, but you're right. High Dive has. I mean. Everything I've watched from them, subtitles feel really accurate, really well done. The dubs are entertaining and fun. They just, again, definitely somebody worth getting behind. The more we can support them. And obviously I'm going to continue to pay Crunchyroll because they're going to have the biggest shows generally. So I'll keep sending them money every month.
That just reminds me I need to re-up my Netflix subscription. The first part of the last season of Cobra Kai just dropped today.
Oh man, so there's what you'll be watching over the next
have to get on that
few days. So we'll be hearing more about that, I'm sure, as we go forward. Maybe we can do a recap of that when you finish that.
When it comes to reboots or continuations of legacy material, it might be the best thing out there.
I mean,
it's incredible.
Certainly have seen a lot of people who were fans of the original movies that certainly are fans of that reboot. So, but yeah, that's kind of what's going on currently. We're going to just do one of the news stories I had listed, and I kind of want to just talk about this one because it's so fascinating to me, especially based on the fact that you talked, and maybe not fondly, about the Rurouni Kenshin dub of the new series and how some of the
decisions were made,
and some of the decisions were fine.
I think Kenshin's voice is fine.
Yeah.
Yahiko's voice is fine. Kaoru's grew on me.
Yeah, but not all of them necessarily were positive necessarily. That's why I think this story is very fascinating to me. The news that first of all, the new Ranma 1/2 or Ranma half. I really don't know how that's pronounced exactly. Maybe we'll figure that out by the time the anime airs. It revealed the returning and new cast staff, October 5th debut and first trailer from Anime News Network. But the important thing is they're bringing back a large chunk of the original Japanese cast. And again, we're talking about the original series that came out, in the late 80s, I believe, or early 90s?
Yeah.
Early 90s,
late 80s, I
think. So, they're bringing back Kappa Yamaguchi, who was in Inuyasha. Megumi Hayashibara, legend. Noriko Hidaka. Basically, they'll reprise their roles as Ranma Satome male, Ranma Satome female, and Akane Tendo. Also coming back, Minami Takayama, Kikuko Inoue, Koichi Yamadera, and Rei Sakuma in the original, all from that original cast. And it's amazing to me that, first off, I think most, if not all of them, are not only still active, but very prolific still. I think maybe not quite to the level that they were in the 90s and 2000s, but the fact that they are saying, hey, we want to bring back the original voices for this all these years later, as a testament to their work and as a tribute to the original work. Because I'm pretty sure even the Japanese Kenshin dub brought in new actors for Kenshin, which, from what I've read online, people were really pleased with it, thought they did a really good job. So you've got, I understand, you've got the option to recast and basically just, especially if you're planning on doing many, many, many more seasons of something, maybe that's the right way to go. But here they're going with the original Japanese cast. Your thoughts on that? Because to me, it's kind of cool. It's a very interesting decision.
Episode 1 aired on April 15th, 1989.
Okay.
So it's been a while.
So was Megumi Hayashibara like 14 or something when she first did that?
Good question.
Try to see. She was born in 1967, so she was 22? 22 when that first came out. And that had to have been one of her first roles because, of course, she started her career as a nurse and then got into voice acting and then became one of the all-time legends of voice acting, as it turns out. So
Yeah, it's weird because I have such mixed feelings about reboots and remakes and whatnot. Sometimes I feel like it's just due to lack of creativity or taking the easy way out. But there, when you start talking about things that are created in the 80s and earlier, I think there is that real hurdle that you're going to struggle to bring in new fans because they're going to take one look at it and just look like, that looks really old. I don't want to watch that. It's unfortunate, but I think that's just the reality of it.
yeah, and I think there are certain shows that have aged well, and by cleaning them up, doing all the digital transfers, they've kind of kept it so maybe they don't have to do a full reboot. And there are some that, for whatever reason, maybe the masters weren't a great quality, or some of the times the masters are lost and they can't clean them up. Sometimes this is kind of the only way to go about it, that you have to just start over. And obviously, Urusei Yatsura brought in a new cast, but it seemed to go really well, and then the reviews of that seemed to be pretty good, at least the ones I saw. So they probably thought, okay, it's time to reboot another Rumiko Takahashi story. And of course, it seems like this is going to be the trend. And we talked about it in depth last week that, with budgets tightening, it's time to go to those tried and true IPs,
Sure thing.
That are going to sell, and you're going to be able to sell merch of. People are going to buy, Ranma merch. They're going to buy Magic Knight Ray Earth merch, and I saw people just about unreasonably excited about Ray Earth, just talking about how it was one of their first anime, and I'm so excited, and English voice actors lining up to get into
absolutely.
the dub. I mean, we saw that with Ranma, even a bunch of people talking about, an opportunity to be in this. So it's cool. I'm really excited that they're bringing those actors back. You do wonder, how many seasons are they planning? I remember the original set had 7 DVD sets or something that went with
it. Long series.
So they do a Kai version that trims it up, or do they try to readapt the whole thing? Obviously, I'm sure ratings sales are going to determine whether that actually happens. But it's
you look at a property like Dragon Ball, and you look at Evangelion, how many times it's been re-released in its original form with, remastering and all this nonsense and added features. You just wonder for some of these properties what took them so long to decide to try to milk it, because the playbook's there. What you need to do to keep making money off of these kind of in perpetuity. Why don't you do it?
Well, and there wasn't as much of a delay between the old stuff and the new stuff, but I look at something like Slayers, where they came back and did Revolution, Evolution R in the late 2008, 2009, when those came out. And it was only maybe 10 years from the end of Slayers Next, or Slayers Try, I should say, to Slayers Revolution. But it felt like an eternity. It's why did we not get Slayers during this whole 10 years? And I'm kind of sitting here now, okay, it's been maybe 15 years since we got new Slayers. Why are we not doing another Slayer series? Again, it's a tried and true formula. The show is fairly episodic. You can pretty much write Slayers. They're not reinventing the wheel. But, again, some of this cast is starting to get up there. You want to use this cast. You want to... Well, let's make some more of it before we can't make any more of it anymore.
You could really create a list of the remade or rebooted series as far as the ones that both modernized and stayed true to that kind of original art style that they used. Slayers is certainly one of those. When Evolution R and Revolution came out, they looked really good, but they didn't. They still looked like Slayers.
Yeah.
The art style was still there. It was just a much fresher, more modern version of that. And I think that's, when you can pull that off, you're doing something right.
And it's I follow the original manga artist on X, and he still posts drawings from time to time. And it's man, let's go. Let's make more of this. Let's do it. So maybe, who knows? So we're continuing to do these reboots. Maybe it's time for a complete reboot of the Slayers franchise, starting with the original season. That would be pretty cool as well. So we'll certainly keep everybody updated on Ranma and other reboots that are coming down the pipeline, and probably we'll keep an eye on those when they start to air. So if you're listening on the podcast version, we're going to step aside, take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking anime themes again. Mike and I each have 5 anime themes that we think you should check out, some of our all-time favorites. We'll do that on the other side of this time out here on the Nerdcast Empire. Back on the Nerdcast Empire, Anime Thursdays, back with you once again. Don't forget to check out our website, nerdcastempire.com. You can check out the Nerdcast Empire store while you're there. You can check out previous episodes of the Nerdcast Empire. Of course, you can download those wherever you get your podcast each and every week. You can check out our Twitch page, which has VODs. I think it saves them for like 30 days or something, so you can go back 4 or 5 episodes in the VODs. They're also uploaded to YouTube when I don't get shot down from uploading them. I usually put them right over there, so you can find them there as well. Don't forget, coming up on Sunday, we'll have another episode of Music Weekly. We're into July now, I believe. We are. July the 5th, I believe, is what our
Correct.
music will be coming from this week. And it sounds like we've got a decent selection to choose from. So
Should be a fun week.
Should be a fun week. Make sure you join us 7 p.m. Eastern Time in the U.S. That'll be coming up. I feel like with the music show, I need to specify because we have listeners from all over the world tune in for our music shows. We have picked bands from pretty much everywhere. 7 p.m. Eastern Time, U.S. time, Sunday for Music Weekly. And then I believe the next week, where we've got Anime Thursdays again, I believe we're going to go through another one of Mike's opening videos or next week. I'm not sure which one.
I'm about to drop the Winter 2024 video, finally.
So
it's completed. I just need to export it and get it up there.
So I believe that'll be the one we'll check out next week, next Thursday. And we'll have anime headlines, news headlines as well. And then that weekend, we'll have another episode of Music Weekly. In a couple of weeks, we'll be talking another WWE Premium Live event. SummerSlam, biggest party of the summer, will be coming your way. Summerfest. Jeremy Piven will never live that down. But that's a guy whose name I haven't thought about in a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have that in a couple of weeks. Make sure you check out our wrestling reviews as we do those. And if there's any big news coming out of Slammiversary this weekend, certainly the NXT TNA crossover has been a lot of fun. The Joe Hendry stuff has been just an absolute blast. They're promising surprises this weekend at Slammiversary, so we will keep our eye to that, and if need be, maybe we'll do a podcast on it if necessary. Let's talk anime music. As we do once a month, usually we will go through and each pick 5 themes. They could be opening themes, they could be ending themes, they could be insert songs. They might even be just character songs. In fact, we certainly get the opportunity sometimes as we buy these soundtracks that they have character songs on there, so we might include those at some point as well. But we're going to go through. We're each going to pick 5. Mike will start with his first 3, and then I'll do my first 3, and then Mike will do his last 2, and I'll do my last 2. And again, you're here live. You're certainly going to get to hear the music if you're listening on the VOD. Fingers crossed that the music gets through. If you're listening on the podcast version, you're probably not going to hear any music. So unless I screw up, which hopefully I will not do.
Your loss.
Certainly. That's why it's important to be here live or on the Twitch VOD if possible. So I know we're each kind of trying to pick stuff from different decades. I think that's, I've basically got 2 songs that are pre-2000, one from the decade of the 2000s, one from the decade of the 2010s, and one from the 2020s. I went with all opens this time because last time I went all endings, which was not kind of what I was planning on doing, but it kind of rolled that way. So I was like, I'm not going to do any endings this time. I'll do all openings. Mike, we're going to let you go first, though. What do you have for us first to check out?
Yeah, so to kind of preview my list, I went with one ending out of the 5 songs. That's usually what I try to do. I tend to steer more toward the openings myself. They just tend to be what I prefer. As far as kind of the breakdown of their categories, I have one from the 90s, a couple from the aughts, and then a couple from the 10s.
Okay.
So tried to mix it up a bit, didn't hit the 80s or the 2020s, but I wanted to feature a couple shows that I've watched recently, which just so happened to be from the 2010s. So without any further ado, my first one is the song Sakamichi no Melody by Yuki, and it is the opening theme to Kids on the Slope.
Not surprising to see this on there, just because we just talked about that you just finished Kids on the Slope, and it's one that shows up on a lot of YouTube videos when they're talking about some of the best opens of the decade, of the year. This one tends to show up on there. And Yuki, I don't know if she showed up yet on our podcast, but I'm sure she will at some point.
Yeah, that was something that I kind of feel bad that I didn't realize, having heard the song so many times while watching the show, is that she's actually the lead vocalist from Judy and Mary. had no idea, but now when I hear the song, I can totally understand that.
Absolutely.
A lot of times there are really cool opens that make me want to watch a show. This was kind of the other way around, where the song itself isn't really something I would gravitate toward, but watching and enjoying the show the way I did really made me enjoy the opening theme a lot more. It was released as the B-side to the single Play Ball on May 2nd, 2012, peaked at number 4 on the Billboard Japan Hot 100, and 3 on the Oricon sales chart. It was composed and arranged by Yoko Kanno, written by Yuki, but yeah, like I said earlier, anytime you have Yoko Kanno working on music for your show, you know it's a big deal, and this open just, it has a certain mood about it. It just really fits the show.
Before I pause our podcast version and play a clip from this, I feel like, and I'll have to go back and look, I feel like also Yuki has been involved in a lot of like anime theme writing. She shows up as credits.
I can see that.
On the credits of a lot of anime songs. I'd have to double check if I'm thinking of, or there could be another Yuki, for example. I could be thinking of somebody else, but I feel like
something had to happen between Judy and Mary and where we are today. So
right. So I feel like she's been very heavily involved. So for those who are not on the podcast version, we're going to play a little bit of this. And from Kids on the Slope, Sakamichi no Melody from Yuki. And we'll play a little clip of this and hope that it gets through. And we'll do that now here on the Nerdcast Empire. Yeah, I mean, it's, again, like you said, not necessarily a song that would jump out at you if you were just listening to a channel that was playing a bunch of Japanese music. But in the context of the show, with the opening visuals with it, I think it definitely fit the show perfectly and was, and again, not really surprising with Yuki, who's done such great work over the years, that this is really good as well.
Yeah, and watching that opening sequence again, like, I remember seeing a negative review regarding the show talking about the character design seeming a little maybe uninspired or boring or drab or something. But when you watch it, it's evident that this isn't a show that takes place in 2024. Like, it's clear this is some sort of period piece. Everything about the characters screams not modernity. So I think they did a really good job of conveying that 60s world. Not that I know a whole lot about the 1960s in Japan, but you feel like there's an authenticity there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it definitely fit the period piece well, which again, not surprising when you consider the big names that worked on that show. They really did a great job with it. So that was Sakamichi no Melody from Yuki. Again, the opening theme to Kids on the Slope. That's pick number 1. What do you got for pick number 2?
So yeah, for pick number 2, after completing Kids on the Slope, I kind of wanted to grab something else out of my physical library to watch, maybe something a little less emotionally heavy and more ridiculous. And I managed that pretty well. My number 4 song is the opening theme to Haven't You Heard I'm Sakamoto. It is the song Coolest by Customize.
This is another one that shows up on a ton of lists as far as best anime opening themes, but it also, like, when you see it, you just know this show can't be anything but ridiculous. And I'm guessing since you've gotten through some of it, you can probably attest to the fact the openings probably has a really kind of tells you what the show is going to be about.
Yeah, exactly. The main character is essentially the coolest guy ever. Like, everything he does, as ridiculous as it seems, ends up turning out insanely cool, and everyone thinks he's amazing. And it just, I always compare high school comedies like this to Cromartie because that's just the default setting, and it kind of has that same just out of nowhere humor to it. You'll go a few minutes not really laughing at all, and then just something out of left field will happen, and you'll bust out. Just a really, really comical show. The song itself was released on April 27th, 2016. Peaked at number 15 on the Oricon singles chart. Was the 7th and final single by Customize. Group was only around from 2012 to 2016 and performed themes for shows like K Return of Kings, Knights of Sidonia, Kurage no Shokudo, and Shonen Hollywood. So they had a decent little run for that 4-year period. But like you mentioned, the song in the open definitely speaks to the absurdity of the show, and it's enjoyable.
We're going to check out a little bit of that one. Again, this is Coolest by Customize, the opening theme to Haven't You Heard I'm Sakamoto. Let's check that out now here on the Nerdcast Empire. Yeah, I mean, again, as I've seen this open many times, it is exactly what I expect that show to be like. It's pretty ridiculous. It's over the top, and the song kind of fits that feeling of being ridiculous and over the top.
Yeah, it's a great show from what I've seen so far. I'm about halfway through it. Each episode's kind of broken up into smaller, 10-minute chunk episodes that really aren't related to each other all that much, but yeah, it's definitely one to check out.
Yeah, check out Haven't You Heard I'm Sakamoto, and the opening theme for that is Coolest by Customize, my second pick this week. One more pick before we jump into my first 3 picks. What do you got for us for pick number 3?
Yeah, for pick number 3, I'm a little disappointed I couldn't find more information about the group, even though one of the members of the group is obviously a legend in the industry. It's a song that kind of has some nostalgia to me because it was one of those mid-2000s shows that actually aired over here. But the song in question is Face. It is the opening theme to Heat Guy J from the band Triforce.
I have to assume this group just didn't last very long because, as you'll mention here in a moment, one of their members clearly not only had a very prolific solo career, but was going to go on and do big things as a member of a group, and I just assumed this was the casualty of that he didn't have time to continue on with this group.
Yeah, I mean, the person in question is Hironobu Kageyama. He's been in several other groups along the way, and none of them really get a whole lot of traction, I don't think, besides Jam Project, obviously. But, I mean, the guy's been doing anime songs since the 80s. The guy's he's a legend. What more can you say? About this show, though, it's kind of interesting. This was like one of the few that MTV2 picked up and aired in the mid-2000s when they were going to get into anime, apparently. That didn't last all that long. I think they only aired the first 13 episodes of the show. Another interesting thing about the show is the creator of it, Kazuki Akane, is also the director of Escaflowne.
Oh, wow.
Among other titles. The guy has had quite a few credits in the anime industry, but just kind of a different, cool show. It's not one that is going to change your life, but the opening theme's really cool, and the art style's a little different. I would definitely say it's worth looking into.
And we'll definitely look into it right here. At least we'll look into the opening theme from Heat Guy J. We'll check that out now. Again, this is Face by Triforce, and let's check out a little bit of the opening theme here. it's interesting watching that opening. It kind of feels like, because you look at the date on that 2002, it kind of feels like they kind of knew they were up against a lot of incoming CGI and tried some animation tactics, a lot of pan shots and things like that to kind of give the perspective of CGI without having to use a ton of CGI. So, I think that's where you kind of get a different style. I think they were really trying to get outside the box. As far as Hironobu Kageyama, I just wonder if he's just one of those dudes that these guys just call up like, hey, man, we got this anime project. Like, do you want to, we already got a drummer and a guitarist. And, like, do you want to just come in and sing on this? And we'll give the band a name and you'll do maybe a couple songs and then we'll just go our separate ways. Because you're right. He shows up in a lot of places under these different named groups, but is never for very long. So it almost feels like he just comes in and does his thing, and then that group doesn't go on anymore after that. It's kind of wild.
It's funny when I'm going through and doing a lot of these anime lists and researching anime songs, I feel like his name just kind of pops up out of nowhere, like way more than you would imagine. Like, I think in 2001 there was one show that had a song by the band Lazy. And then come to find out that was like the first band he formed back in the 70s. And then they got back together in the late 1990s and did some songs. But it's like, this guy's everywhere.
He reminds me of like anime Ronnie James Dio in the fact that like I'm happy that I got to see both of them perform, even if they were in less than ideal circumstances.
Yeah.
Because like we got to see Dio, but it was
as Black Sabbath,
as Heaven and Hell. So we didn't get to hear all the great Dio solo stuff or the Rainbow stuff. We got to see Jam Project in Baltimore in 2008, but they didn't have a band with them. So most of it they played to track. They did do an acoustic set, which was really cool. And it was still cool to see them because they were talking about legends. But it would have been cool to see them with a band behind them.
Or any one of them solo would have been an entirely different and awesome experience.
Absolutely. So, great stuff there. Heat Guy J, definitely a classic to check out. That was Face by Triforce, the opening theme to Heat Guy J. We'll get to my first three picks now. First two songs I'll play are from pre-2000. Again, Mike kind of had the idea, which I think it was a good idea, to not do 80s, 90s because at some point we're going to run out of songs from the 80s that I want to pick. And I try to pick songs because there are a lot of songs and shows that either Mike has seen or neither one of us has seen that I really like, but I'm trying to save those for later because, one, I know if you've seen it, there's a good chance you're going to pick it. And if neither of us has seen it, we can hold it off to somewhere down the road. But I do try to pick ones that do make sense, and I think you do as well as far as shows you've seen or shows that are kind of meaningful. So we're starting off with this first one. We've already mentioned the artist earlier in this podcast that we talked about being a legend. We're going to start off going back to the show Saber Marionette J. This is the first opening theme to Saber Marionette J. It is Successful Mission by Megumi Hayashibara. I feel like at least for a few weeks, or a few months of us doing this version of the podcast, I'm going to have to pick a Megumi song because she was and may still be my all-time favorite artist. This was released October 23rd, 1996. It was her 14th single at the time. Peaked at number 7 on the Oricon chart. Was her second top 10 single at that point behind Give a Reason. Would be the first of 8 straight singles that would reach the Oricon top 10. Was this one, then Don't Be Discouraged, Reflection, Fine Color Day, Infinity, Raging Waves, A House Cat, and Proof of Myself. That basically all ended up in the Oricon top 10. It's almost all the music from this era has a sound and a style to it. This one is no exception. Good upbeat techno kind of sounding song. But again, she played the main character in so many of these shows that she did the opening themes for. She was also the lead character in the show. And again, she's just awesome and a legend. So we're going to check that out now. Let us hear a little bit of Successful Mission by Megumi Hayashibara, the opening theme to Saber Marionette J, right here on the Nerdcast Empire. And so many of these songs had that like driving guitar at the end, or a solo in the middle, and this one was no different. But again, her stuff is classic, and will always end up somewhere on one of my lists. Mike, your thoughts on that one?
She has a sound for sure. It's like if you're looking to accomplish something for your open, and that's what it is, you know who to go to. Like it's kind of similar to something like a jam project, where it's like if you're bringing them in to do your open, you know what you want, and you know you're going to get it. And with her, I mean, you know, kind of to your point earlier, as far as just how many hit songs she's had throughout that period of time, it's like she could really do no wrong.
Yeah, if you were bringing her in, like I said, you're bringing her in to voice the lead character. Obviously, she voiced Lime and Saber Marionette J and Jada X and all the following sequels to that. And, of course, she's Lena Inverse and Slayer, so that's going to show up a bunch. So, like, you're bringing her in to be your lead actress, and you were going to have her sing at least one of the two theme songs, maybe both in some cases. But just a total legend of the business. Great to see her getting something new, as we talked about in the open, in the reboot of Ranma. So, that is from Saber Marionette J, Successful Mission by Megumi Hayashibara from the pre-2000s. This one also from the pre-2000s, one of my all-time favorite shows. I know it's one of your all-time favorites as well. This is from the show Martian Successor Nadesco. The song is You Get to Burning by Yumi Matsuzawa. Another one of those very strange English titles, but just an awesome song. It was released October 23rd, 1996, so it came out literally the same day as Successful Mission.
Wow.
Did not plan it that way. It just kind of worked out.
Neither did they.
Neither did they, but the remastered version, which came out in 2010, is what we're going to hear a little bit later on. Kind of has a little bit more in the way of guitar work that I thought was really well done. This was Matsuzawa's major debut single. The B-side was the first single for another legend of the anime business, Hoko Kuwashima, the ending theme to Martian Successor Nadesco Watashi Rashiku. This was Matsuzawa's highest-rated single, reaching number 9 on the Oricon chart. The remastered version also recharted in 2010 at number 63, but the opening and ending of Nadesco are kind of, they're very stereotypical. Your opening theme is high-energy guitars, really kind of setting the action. Then your ending theme is slow and is obviously the main female protagonist in the show singing the song. It's totally different, but this is one of those opens that pulled you into the show and made you want to watch it. And thankfully, in this case, unlike some other shows that's happened to me on, the show was really amazing. So definitely did not regret getting pulled into the show. So let's check this one out now. Again, You Get to Burning from Yumi Matsuzawa, her debut single, the opening theme to Martian Successor Nadesco. Let's check that out now. We could probably do a whole podcast on Martian Successor Nadesco because there's so many things about that show. We've talked about the casting decisions before and how brilliant some of those were. Oh, yeah. The story itself was just so well written. We won't talk about the movie.
What could have been.
What could have been. What could still be. Hey, guys, we're talking reboots.
Yeah.
Can we do another Nadesco? Can we bring it back and give it a good ending at the end? The subtle undertones, kind of talking about what happens when you find out that the faceless enemy is not an enemy after all. Like it's not as preachy maybe as Gundam as far as that, but it is kind of one of those things like, hey, these people that we've been fighting this whole time are and you'll find out.
It's so easy to dehumanize your opponent.
100%. And this show kind of tells you what happens when you find out that they're not a whole lot different than you are. And again, the cast is great, English and Japanese. The music in this show is great. It's just really fantastic. Just thoughts on the song and the show in general.
definitely one of those all-time classics. One of the earlier shows in my fandom for sure, and part of the reason that I'm really into things like Gundam at this point. The dub cast of that, just so legendary. Spike Spencer is one of the all-time greats.
Yeah.
I have nothing bad to say.
Yeah, it's everybody should watch that show. It's a bonus if you watch that show after you watch Evangelion, because obviously you get Spike Spencer as Shinji, and then you get Spike Spencer in this role as Akito Tenkawa,
Who's really the better character.
who's by far
honestly.
the better character. So
Another thing about that show, just real quick, is I recently picked up Genshin again to kind of watch some of it, and as far as my knowledge goes, Nadesco was one of the first shows to really incorporate that show within a show trope.
Geki Ganger.
And you see it obviously in Nadesco or in Genshin later on with Kujibiki Unbalanced. So that's really cool.
Yeah, 100%. And obviously, if you buy like the Blu-ray version or some of the recent DVD versions, it includes the OVA. And of course, unlike most shows where the OVA is maybe some non-canon extra episode they throw on, the OVA in Nadesco is an episode of Geki Ganger. So it's the Geki Ganger cast in an episode. And then, of course, there's also an episode in the middle of Nadesco, which was basically a recap episode where it's the Geki Ganger crew complaining that they're getting a rerun of Nadesco, and then they kind of take you through, which was much more common back in those days because animation staffs, of course, your cell drawing all this stuff, like sometimes you get behind and you end up having to do basically a recap episode to give the animation crew a time to finish the series. So, but yeah, Nadesco is an all-time classic. We could talk about that for hours, but we will not subject our listeners to that. But definitely check it out. I think you can find it just about everywhere still physical copies. I think it's still streaming somewhere, hopefully. But definitely check out Martian's successor, Nadesco. We're into the 2000s, 2009. We already mentioned Megumi Hayashibara, and we can't have Megumi reference without a Masami Okui reference. So we're going to move to the show Yu-Gi-Oh! And as is many times the case with these shows that came over here and got the 4Kids treatment.
Bastardized.
And, yes, it had better music in the Japanese, just like Pokemon did, just like so many One Piece. Yu-Gi-Oh! Did as well. And this song is from Masami Okui. It is called Shuffle, which makes sense. You're talking about shuffling cards. A lot of card references in this song. This was released April 25th, 2001 as the second opening theme to Yu-Gi-Oh! Episodes 49 through 80. It was her 26th single, but it was the last one produced by Toshiro Yabuki, who actually also produced the Megumi Hayashibara song that we talked about earlier. He worked with Okui from 1994 up until this single, and then she ended up kind of producing everything from there on forward, but a legend in the business as well. The crazy things about this is, and this happens so often, we look up these anime themes, you just don't know who's going to end up working on these. This song features Richie Kotzen on guitar and Billy Sheehan on bass, both from Mr. Big. The B-side, which was Anohi no Go-Go, which is also a really good song, I believe it was an ending theme for Yu-Gi-Oh!, features Steve Lukather of Toto on guitar. So big names on this song. I did not know that before I started looking at this, but this has always been one of my all-time favorites, and it definitely has an extra little bit knowing who worked on it. But it reached number 55 on the Oricon chart, but it's really a good one. Again, Shuffle from Masami Okui. And we're going to check that out now. Again, featuring Richie Kotzen and Billy Sheehan on this one as well. This is Shuffle, the second opening theme to Yu-Gi-Oh! Right here on the Nerdcast Empire.
「
got the bonus there at the end. Let's mute that. I didn't realize the video was going to play it again there at the end. But the funny thing about that is listening to it now, knowing that they had these big name people on it, like you hear the guitars and everything. It's like clearly like they wrote this with those guys in mind. But also the video, the opening sequence, which obviously I shared in the chat, but people can check it out. Make that show seem about 1,000% cooler than the English version of the opening theme, which it is what it is. But your thoughts on that one?
It's weird to me, especially when we live in 2024, where something like Korean pop music has become so big that there was a time they were like, well, we can't use that song in America. We better come out with our own. Like, somehow that would detract from the popularity. We'd already reached the point where people knew this stuff was Japanese, so I don't really understand. One other, even probably more important tidbit about that song is it was the number 13 open in 2001 from the Mic list. That 2001 was a huge year.
Well, you see, it only got to 55 on the Oricon chart, which just kind of tells you the competition.
She had a bigger song on my list than that in 2001, so it was a pretty crowded year.
Yeah, no question about it. But a classic for sure. Definitely check that out. Anything by Masami Okui is going to probably end up on my list as well. But again, check out Shuffle from Yu-Gi-Oh! That's my third pick of the week. Mike's got two more picks to make, so let's throw it back over to him and get to your fourth pick of this week.
And yes, that was Mike approved. The seal of approval. Moving on to my fourth pick. My last two actually are kind of very much nostalgia picks. For anyone who maybe got into anime through Adult Swim in the early 2000s, something about the endings and opens just really connect with you and they resonate. I don't know if there's an ending theme that hits as hard in, how I feel watching anime as this one. My number two pick here is the second ending from Inuyasha. It is Fukai Mori from Do As Infinity.
Yeah, this is one of the all-time great ending themes, all time. It is exactly what an ending theme should be. If you're not going to go with an upbeat song for your ending theme, which those are always great too, if you're going to go with a slower theme, this does it about as well as you can do it, and the visuals that go with it add to it and really kind of take it to a whole different level.
Yeah, so different than most shows where you might have the ending sequence. Even if it's a slower song, you're still seeing kind of like a montage of your main protagonists. Meanwhile, this one was like, one of the two primary antagonists in the show at the time, Sesshomaru, we're just going to center the whole ending theme around him, which kind of led you to believe, okay, this guy clearly at some point in time is not just a bad guy. There's more to this guy. There's some depth there. And the song really conveyed that. And, going through, a lot of times I would record like the Adult Swim lineup and then watch it back the next day because usually I was working the night when it aired. But just that first beat going into the ending just hits you like, oh, that's the end of the show. Man, can't wait for the next one. But just a tremendous song. It was released June 27th, 2001. Peaked at number 5 on the Oricon singles chart. It was their best-selling single in Japan. It was certified gold both physically and digitally. They're classic, and this is just a flawless ending.
Yeah, I'm not sure it gets any better than this ending for Inuyasha. Fukai Mori from Do As Infinity. Let's check out, starting at the beginning on this one, we'll listen to a little bit of this here on the Nerdcast Empire.
「
we can end up playing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Necessarily, I don't know how our VOD will like that, so I'll cut it off there. We're going to repeat the chorus there, but again, the visuals, everything about it is great. And Inuyasha just kind of nailed ending themes generally, like visuals and songs, and they found a way to kind of pull the emotion out. And like you said, maybe feature characters that didn't really make a lot of sense at the time, but later on would make more sense as to why they were being featured. And it's kind of, I don't want to say it's to use Gundam as an example twice in an episode, but something you see in anime so often is bad guy is not really a bad guy, or bad guy is very complicated.
Yeah.
And you're going to understand at some point why they ended up going down this road, and either they may still die, they may get killed off by the hero, or they redeem themselves because, the hero comes and fixes them, basically. That's not something you see a ton of in Western media. I don't think it's much, but Japanese media kind of feels like, I don't say it's a trope. I don't think it goes quite that far, but it is definitely something you see them use a lot in storytelling.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely in this case, anytime you can take demons and half demons and monsters and whatnot and make them somehow really relatable and human, I think you've done a pretty good job. And I think with like Inuyasha and Sesshomaru and even Naraku, in some ways, you can kind of understand their motivations. And even though obviously Naraku is the ultimate evil, more or less, right up until the end, he doesn't seem... He doesn't just seem bad for bad's sake.
Yeah, agreed. And again, I think they just, for whatever reason, anime seems to do that better than any other format. And Inuyasha as a show did it very, very well. But great ending theme. Definitely check that out. If you're a fan of the series, you probably already have that one on repeat on your iPod or whatever you listen to music on in 2024. I still my Clickwheel iPod's still holding up for me, so
you're lucky.
I am very lucky. I think one of these days it's not going to, but it's still hanging in there. But one more pick this week. What do you got for us for your final pick?
So yeah, kind of in that same vein, only going with an open this time. This is another show that was featured on Adult Swim, and both the song and the anime style is just so late 90s, I feel. Like there's just a certain look and sound to it that I certainly enjoy. The song in question is Through the Night by Masahiko Aramachi. It is the opening theme to Outlaw Star.
Again, very 90s. I mean, there's just no question about it. It has a style on its own, but yet still to some degree looks good. Like it's one of those 90s shows that seems to pass the test of time somehow, and this music theme is one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah, I think back then when you thought of anime, you just had a visual of what you thought it looked like, and I think so many shows at that point in time, just more so than even what we have now, just encapsulates that's anime. That's everything about it is just quintessentially anime, and this is certainly no different. Wasn't a whole lot out there on the singer. He was a former member of the bands Shaman and Wild Style. Didn't find much on anything beyond that, though. And that's unfortunate because the song is really good. But yeah, take a listen.
Yeah, it's always kind of a bummer when there's just not a lot of information out there, but we're going to get to hear his best work, potentially, as we're going to check out the opening theme from Outlaw Star from 1998. This is Through the Night, Masahiko Aramachi. Let's check it out here on the Nerdcast Empire. I think the thing I enjoy about this one the best, and let me know if you watch this, and leave me a comment maybe on YouTube or reach out to us. I feel like the one thing that makes that so good, besides the fact the song is amazing, is I feel like if you have never seen Outlaw Star, I feel like you can watch that opening sequence and peg the stereotype for each one of the characters.
Absolutely.
Like, that's that character type, and that's that character type, and then there's the ditzy one, and there's the crazy one. Like, they did such a great job in a minute and 30 seconds in telling you everything about the main characters that you're going to need to know before you start watching the episode. And that's, again, anime and manga are such a visual experience. I mean, they always say that, the true manga, you don't really need to translate because the picture should tell you what the story is. It feels like that opening theme does exactly that.
Yeah, absolutely. In a way, watching it kind of feels like it is the equivalent, like what Nadesco was for Evangelion, Outlaw Star is the Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Where it's like you still kind of have that space element, but it's clearly something that isn't going to take itself as seriously. Maybe not a one-to-one kind of comparison between those shows, but you kind of get that vibe.
The other vibe I got was, man, this feels like something that was on television. Like, it just feels like an anime that would be perfect for Adult Swim, or Tech TV.
And it was.
Yeah, it was. Like, it has that look about it that it's like, this is going to appeal to all anime fans, and it's just a great song too to go with it.
Whenever they with them rebooting the Toonami, like, this is what I want to see them reboot. I want to see the Adult Swim lineup that was around that time, where you have your Triguns, your Cowboy Bebop, Yu Yu Hakusho, Inuyasha, Outlaw Star, Trigun. I might have said that already. I don't remember.
Show it twice. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. But it was kind of like that lineup of just legendary shows, and not to criticize like Bleach or Naruto, because they're obviously great too, but it was kind of before those hit, and you had that same kind of block of those late 90s, early 2000 shows that I think that was the peak. Yeah,
it certainly got a lot of people our age into anime, for sure. And I think when you talk to people our age, that's the era they're most fond for. And a show like Outlaw Star certainly fits right in there with that. So.
And honestly, it's probably why some of those other shows get the irrational hate that they do, because ultimately it's like, they're the new kid. Like, they're not the people you grew up around. It was something new and different, and there's nothing wrong with them. But there is that kind of it. You see the same with things like My Hero Academia, where it's the same people who are probably into Naruto that hate that because it's kind of that next big thing.
Yeah, there's always going to be a next big thing, and there's always going to be people from the previous generation that aren't going to be excited to see it. Now, some of them may come around, and I'm sure some people did, but. Yeah, there's always that resistance when the next wave of big shows come out. So, definitely check out Outlaw Star. Check out that song Through the Night, one of my all-time favorites as well. We're going to get to my final two picks. We're on to the 2010s for my next pick, and we're going to get to the artist Kotoko, one of my favorite artists of the 2000s and 2010s. She had so much stuff out there. This was one of her few big hits from the 2010s, so I wanted to throw it in there. This was from the final season, the first open of the final season, to Shakugan no Shana. This was released on November 16th, 2011. It is Light My Fire by Kotoko. It was her 17th single. It peaked at number 19 on the Oricon Weekly Singles Chart and number 18 on the Billboard Japan Hot Singles Chart. It was her fifth consecutive single to rank on the Billboard Japan Hot Singles Chart. Started with the number 13 single, which was Daily Daily Dream, which was one of the opening themes for Hayate the Combat Butler. She has done a bunch of opens. Please Teacher was one of her earlier ones, and just continued. And again, like some of the other artists I picked, she very much has a style. This very much fits that style. Shauna is a show that I really, really enjoyed. Kind of bummed still to this day that it didn't get a better ending to me, but it's definitely still worth the ride because it's just really, really well done. And had two great dub casts. The first season was done by Ocean Group, and then when Funimation got the rights after Geneon or Pioneer, one of the two went under, they brought it in-house and did the dub for the second and third seasons. But both dub casts are really excellent. Definitely worth checking out. We're going to check out Light My Fire from Kotoko, the first opening theme to the final season of Shakugan no Shana, here on the Nerdcast Empire. Couple things before I throw it over to Mike for this one. Number one, this was a JC staff show. They did a bunch of shows I liked, including Slayers, so definitely kind of had that same spiritual feeling about it. Rio from Supercell had a writing credit on this, so I guess he was involved at this point on some writing stuff. So when it came up in the credits, I had forgot that I had noticed that when doing research on that. But the other thing about this opening theme is you can tell there's a bunch of crap about to go down because the first two seasons opening themes, you can tell like there's some conflict, but it's more focused on the people in the show, and it's definitely not to the same. Like this show, there's explosions, there's all kinds of stuff going on. Like we're clearly getting to the climax of this show. That very much comes across in this opening theme. But again, I've always been a big fan of Kotoko and her music, and this is, I think, one of her better opening themes for Shauna. So, Mike, your thoughts on this one?
It does kind of follow that evolution of openings where it's like, okay, the first one should get you kind of interested, like, oh, here's what's going on, that's cool. And by the time you get to like third or fourth, it's like, okay, everything is ultra serious now. This, if you haven't started watching yet, you better go back to the beginning and start now because you're gonna want to see what's going on here. This is certainly a big deal. It's ultra imperative, and anytime I see this on someone's list on YouTube, I for a show I've not seen, it stands out.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things you see that and you may think I need to go back and watch it. And I definitely encourage everybody to watch it. The Japanese version is really good as well. It's a really good show. Like I said, the ending wasn't great for me. Maybe you watch it and you think it's great. But overall, really well done. Really well done by the dub casts. Definitely check that out. Again, Shakugan no Shana, first opening of the final season, Light My Fire by Kotoko. Finally, move on to the 2020s, a show that we have talked very fondly about on this show. Wanted to spotlight them again. We had spotlighted the ending theme of this particular season of this show in a previous edition, so I want to get around to one of the opening themes. This is from the second season of Classroom of the Elite. It is Dance in the Game by Zach. Zach does a lot of the opening music for this show, and absolutely knocks it out of the park each time. She's really, really good. It's interesting. She's another one of those singers that her most, or I won't say best song, but the highest rated song she had was her very first one. It was Sparkling Daydream, which was the opening theme to Love, Chinibyo, and Other Delusions. But this one was her 23rd single, reached number 90 on the Oricon singles chart. It's interesting. They ask her, and thankfully it's one of the newer songs, so there was a little more information. They ask her about the song, and the quote she gave is, "This song is closer to the suspiciousness of the main character, Kiyotaka Ayanokoji." And Zach revealed that she portrayed Ayanokoji's dark side and the madness he hides inside him in a happy way. That is her description. There's no question the main character of that show, and I can say this without any kind of spoilers, isn't quite all there in the head. Like, he's clearly got a lot of voices talking to him inside his brain.
Having not seen the third season yet, I contend that this is one of the most interesting protagonists in an anime I've ever seen.
No question, and nothing in the third season is going to change your mind about that. He is absolutely... This was a show that I did not expect to get into, and when I got into it, it just drew me in and was so much fun. Definitely different. This song is one of the reasons why. This was season 2's opening theme. And we're going to check that out now. Dance in the Game by Zach, the second season of Classroom and the Elite. We'll check that out here now on the Nerdcast Empire.
真実を明かせ
The biggest challenge of this show is how many people in the opening sequence can you even recognize who they are? Like, that was the hardest part of this show, is there's so many characters, and obviously they're spotlighting characters that are going to be big in that season. So as you watch the show, you're like, oh, I know who that. Okay, there's that person. Here's these people that kind of look bad. But watching it again, even now, it's just like, I don't know who half of these people are. Like, I need to go back and watch the second season again.
That's my concern jumping into season 3. It's just how little I remember from the first 2 seasons as far as names and why I should care about certain characters because they all kind of blend together.
I think they did a really good job at the beginning of season 3, kind of bringing you back up to speed and kind of like, oh, hey, there's that person. Remember this thing they did? And oh, here's this person. Like,
as analytical as the characters are, especially like the main characters, I could see that being an easy way to bring you back into it.
It's kind of a cheat code that you can be like, clearly he's in his mind, he's reminding himself of why this person's important and how's he going to use this person. And so it is very much a show that you can jump back into after a long break. But it's really good. If you want something that's a little different than your typical classroom drama, I think you really will enjoy Classroom the Elite. It's really good stuff. Any thoughts on the theme of Classroom the Elite? A show that has really good music.
It's interesting. Working on this winter 2024 video, I've encountered the third opening theme to it, and I think I prefer the second one, but it's kind of odd to see it only reach 90 on the Oricon. I wonder how popular that show is in Japan, just in general.
It does make you wonder. The other thing to keep in mind, at least, kind of when I was looking at it, is there was a big gap between season 1 and season 2 of this show.
Yeah.
The first season came out in the late 2010s, and then there were several years before so it could be that maybe it wasn't immediately as popular because it had such a big gap. And then, of course, they ran season 2, season 3, basically either back-to-back or with one season in between. But probably like, hey, we need to actually run these close together. People are going to forget who all these people are again. And and I'm hoping there'll be more of it. I think there's certainly room for more. I would prefer that there be more, and I don't have to go buy the manga. I will if I need to, but it's really good. And I was a little surprised it wasn't rated higher, but again, music competition is, as you know, going through these opens is pretty stiff out there. So. Speaking of music, that is going to wrap up this episode of the Nerdcast Empire. Thank you to everybody who has checked us out. Thanks to everybody who watched. As Chris mentioned in the chat, our VOD of the last episode has done really, really well. In fact, it was also the highest we've ever had as far as unique viewers who watched live. So a big thank you. If you are here and you've made it this far, which is almost an hour and 15 minutes in.
I'm still here.
We're still here. Drop us a follow if you could. We really would appreciate it. It helps us out tremendously. Again, we're trying to get to 50 followers. Once we get to 50, we're able to monetize the channel. We're not going to make a ton of money, but at least be able to make some money and be able to do some cool things with that. So please drop us a follow. We would really appreciate it. But that's going to wrap things up for this edition of the Nerdcast Empire. We're going to be back on Sunday for another episode of Music Weekly. The music of July the 5th will be coming up on Sunday. Big thanks to everybody who joined us live tonight. Big thanks to Chris for holding down the chat as always. Big thanks to Stove Lake Media for their continued support of our podcast each and every week. And again, we'll be back with you Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time for another episode of Music Weekly. For Mike and me and everybody else in the crew, I am Matt saying so long. Don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.